All right. Welcome in, everyone, to podcast number 5 of the Draught Night podcast. I'm Ron Hearn here with my buddy Brandon Be Cooley. So, podcast number 5, we are going to be coming to you a little bit earlier in the week, and we'll get into that the reason why here in a bit. Agenda for the week, or for the pod, we're going to mix things up a little bit. We're going to hit things off with some stars. They probably had the biggest news of the week. Then we'll get into some Cowboys, some Mavs, and then maybe some surprise topics towards the end. So let's start with why we're coming to you early in the week. Brandon, you are abandoning the listener.
Yeah, that's why we're jumping in early this week, and we're going to probably do a later one next week. I am taking a family trip to Japan from tomorrow through the 22nd. We come, and I'll be back on the 23rd, especially if we have big sports news that break between now and then, or if I just miss you guys and I want to go ahead and record another one, I'll make it work. But yeah, it's going to be quite the time difference. I'm going to be on the opposite side of the world, or for you flat earthers, I guess, just down the way, however that works.
How dare you take a vacation and put that above the listeners?
You know, that's okay. But you know what? I just saw what you have in your hand. Roller Town. This is their big German. We initially, when we started this podcast, we really wanted to start with this beer because, number one, Ben and Skin are main investors and main owners of that place. The big German is named after none other than number 41, Dirk. Love that sound. And it wasn't available. We couldn't find it anywhere within the time frame we had. So we pushed it. But now here we are. It's a delicious Kolsch. This is probably one of my favorite lighter beers to drink. It's plenty of flavor. Also, Roller Town's amazing. Made good friends with Jonathan Rogers over there, the HMFIC at that place, and want to show some support by drinking the product.
Yeah, so minimal hops and a smooth finish is the kind of the tagline for the beer. I'd say it describes both Dirk's game and the taste of the beer perfectly. It's perfect encapsulation. So I too am a big fan of this in terms of lighter beers. This is probably damn near all I drink down at the AAC. You can get that both in draft and in cans, in case you're interested. Draft, I know there's a couple of spots on the first floor. Cans, you can get it pretty much anywhere. So it's one of my favorite beers to drink out there. It's a great beer for spring, summer, fall, and it's just one of several different. I did have a question. So I've been following kind of loosely Roller Town's expansion plans. So they're moving into Frisco, right? Do you know, are they giving up the Salina location?
Not initially, I don't believe so. I talked to Jonathan whenever they first broke ground, which has been now about a year. I believe they broke ground last March on the Frisco location. I believe they're keeping the Salina location, at least for a little while, for brewing purposes. But of course, they're expanding the actual brew process to Frisco, which if you haven't been over there, it's right over by the Frisco Fresh Market. It is going to be an amazing facility. They're going to have plenty of space for events. Of course, their tasting room. It's going to be a good time. I'm actually going to be talking to Jonathan here in just a little while, or hearing from his team about a food truck festival and music and beer and stuff that we have every spring. So we're hoping that they're going to be a part of this event again this year.
Do you know, have they come out with a date in terms of when the new location will be open?
I think June. This summer. It's either June or July. Don't hold me to that, because with construction, you never really know. I'll ask today, though. I'll find out, and I'll have that update on the next pod.
I'm super excited for the new location. I checked out the plans for how it's going to look, and it just looks sick. It's a lot more drivable in terms of where I'm at, so I think I'll be able to get up there a lot more than I am the current tap room. So super excited about that. I wanted to ask you about, so you're going to Japan, 15-hour plane ride. What is your plan, right? I've only had a couple of these flights that are super, super long, but I kind of had a plan of attack of how I'm going to survive, 12 hours in the tin can. What is your plan? Do you have a bunch of movies downloaded? Are you going to drug yourself out? What are you doing?
I believe my wife said that the best plan for us and the kids is to stay up as long as we can. I want to say that when we land, it's going to be daytime, like morning, I believe. Once again, I don't know. I forget what the time difference is and everything. But last I heard, we need to stay up We need to make sure that we don't go to sleep or sleep as little as possible. It's American Airlines. They've got the little TVs on the seats that will be preloaded with everything. So I'll probably find some movies. I almost always, if I've got a long flight like this, watch the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. It's one of my go-tos. So that's probably what's going to happen.
Incredible that you mentioned that. That was the exact thing that I did going to Italy. So I had all 3 extended editions downloaded on the iPad. And so that's what I did. I can't sleep for shit on planes. I don't know why. So it is just a struggle for me. And then my knees start swelling, and man, it is pure misery. So when I went to Italy, we did an overnight flight, right? They serve you dinner, and then they start turning the lights down, and you just settle in for the long night. I started with the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and then I was kind of zoning in and out. I woke up at 4 a.m. to the feeling of my wife dropping wine all over my shorts. That was a bottom 5 moment. And I kind of zoned in and out for a few more hours. The sun came up. They started serving breakfast. I was completely miserable. That was one of the low points in my life. So yeah, those things are.
But if you're getting wine poured on you on the way to Italy, I mean, it was just bottom 5 of that trip.
Man, being up at 3 a.m. with no extra clothes to change into. So I just had to sit down and just absorb essentially this red wine on my khaki shorts, and then go sleepless for another 5 hours until we landed.
Where did you go, and how long were we there?
We were there 2 weeks. We landed in Milan, and then we traveled to Venice, Florence, Rome, back to Milan to fly out. So that was our honeymoon trip, actually. So
okay,
the only time I've ever been to Europe. That would have been the fall of 2022. So 2.5 years ago.
Yes. Yeah, we went to Italy last summer, and it was amazing. We spent most of the time in Tuscany, stayed in Lucca, and then we jumped over to Rome for a couple of days. I saw Rome, been there, probably okay never going back. It was very people-y. It was cool to see, Trevi and the Spanish stairs and all that, but I probably don't ever have a reason to go back.
I agree. I definitely want to go back to Italy. I don't have an itch to go back to Rome, though.
What's the next stop on your bucket list for traveling?
I would love to go to Austria and do Vienna, then go over to Prague and the Czech Republic and down to Munich in Germany. And that's the next one. So we don't know when we're going to do it, but that's kind of what I'm outlining. Have you ever been to anywhere else in Europe?
Nope. I have not. Well, no, not Europe. We did go to London on the backside of our trip. So we jumped across, went over there in 4 days. That's actually where I blew out my ankle. I had to have reconstructive surgery August of last year. Yeah, I tore 5 tendons, a ligament, and a muscle.
What were you doing?
Walk into dinner. So I scratched. I would walk in, and it was downtown London. We're going to dinner, and there was like some old carriage tracks in the stone brick road. And I had previously injured my ankle in the previous March, and I guess it wasn't all the way healed. And so my foot caught the little angle of that carriage route or mark just right, rolled my ankle, and it swelled up like a balloon immediately. Fortunately, it was the very last night of vacation, so I hobbled through the airport, which Heathrow is a mess, and then we got home, and then I got a surgery consult and then had surgery.
Was this an alcohol-induced injury?
No, that was just me, the wife, and the 2 little girls. The rest of the family, they stayed in Italy, and yeah, we were just walking to dinner. Makes for a good summer.
And that wraps what it has been by far our longest intro of all the pods that we've done. So you never know how these things are going to turn out. This one was a little bit intro heavy, but that's okay. So let's transition over to every pod so far. We've started off with the Mavs. Now we are starting off with the Dallas Stars. They deservingly, in my opinion, take that number 1 spot. They did kind of, something major this week. You want to fill us in?
Yeah, so they traded for Mikko Rantanen, which was a great trade. We gave up a lot for it, 2 first-rounders. We got rid of a couple players in the process. His offensive production is incredible. He's already shown that. In the first 2 games, first game against the Oilers, while we got beat 5-4, he still produced one of our goals. And then in the game against Canucks 2 nights ago, we knocked the pants off him. He had another goal. He is already showing that he's worth it. But I'll tell you what, the Oilers welcomed him to this team. He got open ice checked a couple of times, pushed up against the boards pretty hard a couple of times. And he's a big dude. There was one where he took the puck center ice and just took a shoulder to the chest, got put on his tail, but he popped back up and kept driving. He's showing what he's made of, which is good. And he took some big hits, which I also think is good. It shows the team that he can take the hits and keep going. So I'm really excited about what he is going to give us for this final playoff stretch. And with Sagan coming back from injury soon, I think we're going to see some really, really powerful offense.
So this made waves here in Dallas, obviously. Is there a comp NBA wise or NFL wise, right? What if this trade were made in NBA or NFL terms, what would it be?
NBA would be like not a franchise player. It'd be like a really good running back. It'd be like Saquon to the Eagles. I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Really good player can potentially change the franchise with what he can do. So I say Saquon to the Eagles is a good comparison.
Okay. I saw that after the trade went down, Vegas made the Stars the favorites to win the Stanley Cup. Do you think that's fair?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I said in the first pod before the trade deadline, before we even got Mikko, I said that what the trades that they already made and then also extending Wyatt Johnston, that they had done, I thought enough at that point to still be a top 3 team. And then with the Mikko trade, I agree completely with that assessment that they are the top pick for the Stanley Cup.
It seems to me like, and let me know if this is unfair, but based on what they traded and, just kind of the state of the team right now, it seems like they're all in. Mm-hmm. And all in as in like the real all in, not the Jerry Jones all in. Do you think that's fair?
Yes, absolutely. They are in a win now mode. We just won 2 years ago. I expect that to be another thing. In our window, the Johnston extension with Mikko, I think they gave him an 8-year deal. Sagan and Ben probably aren't going anywhere anytime soon. The core of the team, there's so much good on this team, and not only offensively, but also defensively. I think we've got at least the next 4 to 5 years to be a contender.
Okay, that's good then. I was worried that, hey, we mortgaged the future and you did what the Mavericks did and you got like a 2-year window. But if they can extend beyond there, and I mean, also knowing that you have a top flight front office and you have a top flight GM and you have a good history of drafting and player development and all of that stuff, I think that gives me a little bit more confidence, not just in the short term, but in the future when compared to the Cowboys or somebody like that. They have no clue what they're doing and this thing's going to be over quickly. So that's good to hear. Okay. So the only other Stars news I wanted to bring up was I wanted to give kudos to the fans for starting up what was probably the most impressive Fire Nico chants I've heard yet during the Stars game. So it was incredibly loud and made me incredibly happy, and also probably had a effect on the rest of the Metroplex, because then all of a sudden Fire Nico chants had fired up at FC Dallas game, and even freaking medieval times as people are chowing down on their baked chicken and tomato soup, they're doing Fire Nico chants instead of rooting for their team or however that works. So kudos to the fans. You guys are real ones.
Well, the question is, where does it stop? Right? Because while the AAC has the ability to kick fans out, which I still don't agree with, but they had that right. I mean, dude can't go anywhere. I think that probably crosses the line. Let me walk that back. But I hope at any sporting event, and of course, when he went to LA, they were chanting, "Thank you, Nico," which rightfully so. They got an amazing trade, so why wouldn't they? But I don't see the end in sight for this, and I think I love it. I love that every fan base is really coming together and supporting the Mavericks, or at least the fan base.
I just think it's funny that we can do Fire Nico chants literally anywhere in DFW except for Mavs games.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hilarious if by some crazy miracle, this thing's still like, a huge thing in September and we get a Fire Nico chant during a Cowboys game. I think it's going to happen during a Rangers game. I think that's a given. That's baseball. You have the most downtime, I feel like, right? Where fans are just chilling and you can get a chant going pretty easily. Cowboys games, that's going to be interesting to see because they're so fast paced and frenetic. So I kind of don't think it'll happen, but that will complete the holy trinity, if you will. Anything else on Stars?
No, I'm good with the Stars. I mean, anything less than a run at the cup, like in the finals, I think would be not a failure, but a big disappointment for this team.
Really feel the energy just being here in Dallas, right? And the conversations and seeing people out and about wearing Stars gear. There's a little bit of magic in the air, I think. Everyone's jumping on board the bandwagon, including me. I'm excited to see how the rest of the season plays out. They're carrying Dallas on their shoulders right now. Let's switch gears. Let's move over to Dallas Cowboys. There's a lot going on right now. Free agency news could break at any minute, so we'll keep an eye on things. One of the big things that happened recently, Myles Garrett signed a record deal. He's getting paid, what is it? $45 million a year or something crazy like that. It's absolutely insane
contract.
Yes, I think is it 120 guaranteed or something like that. It's
I think 120, 123, 128 was guaranteed.
So, in my mind, that just made things a hell of a lot more expensive for the Dallas Cowboys, who are currently, I don't know if they're in negotiations. There has to be something done about Micah Parsons sooner rather than later. You mentioned something, a quote that came out recently about him saying he doesn't need $40 million a year. Do you think that's changed?
No, I don't think it does, because that came after the Myles Garrett deal. Okay. And while Micah could demand any contract he wanted, he is a game-changing defensive player. His main comment to not wanting the $40 million, and not say that he doesn't want it, of course he does, but he knows that if he garners that much of the salary, then that's going to chip away at everybody else. And he doesn't want to be the only guy that's an actual force on that defensive front. If it's just him and he's got three other just dudes around him on the defensive line or linebacking core, no one's going to win. So he's fine taking a hometown discount or whatever, but he said that he's cool taking less to have better pieces around him, which I respect.
So why isn't that deal done today?
No, because he still has one more year in his contract, doesn't he? And because they probably could tag him next year if they needed to from a cap space standpoint, but they've done a lot of things this year already to restructure and renegotiate to make more room for this next year's cap. So who knows? I also know that he wanted to be drafted by the Cowboys. He wants to stay a Cowboy. He doesn't want to leave. I think it's really funny. We talked about this in the very first pod during the Luka trade, that the Micah Parsons trade rumors were starting to spin up. And so the fact that he saw Garrett's contract 4 weeks ago, the rumor mill was starting, and he still says, no, I want a decent contract that pays me enough, but allows my team to still flourish.
So with all that being said, I would get that deal done today, right? I would not wait. Recently, this is what the Cowboys do. They push things right up to the line, to the point where people are missing training camp. That's what happened with CeeDee Lamb. They're threatening to miss games, and then we end up giving a record deal. Instead of getting ahead of things, if you have the guy literally telling you he'll take a discount today, send over the extension. I don't know. I just don't like the idea of this dragging out again, and then it lingers into next year, and it just hangs over the team, and it's just a nonstop story. I hate that.
You want my opinion on that?
I do.
Jerry considers himself the master negotiator. He says, hey, look, I'm good. I just want this. Sign the deal. Where's the chase? Where's the battle? Where's the negotiations at the table? You know, the rule of thumb is, everybody wins if both sides feel like they got screwed. If you've got a player like Micah Parsons saying, hey, pay me $28 million, for example, and I'm happy. Well, Jerry Jones didn't get screwed on the deal. Micah Parsons is saying, hey, I'm fine with that. So there's no battle. The negotiation doesn't happen. And that's why I think it hasn't yet. And I think that's why the CeeDee Lamb contracts and every other, the Ezekiel Elliott contract a couple years ago when he stayed in Cabo and didn't come to training camp.
It does seem to me lately, though, that Jerry isn't the one doing the screwing. He's the one getting screwed. Right? Because it was a record deal to CeeDee. It was a record deal to Dak. The Zeke thing turned out to be a complete abomination, right? One of the worst Cowboys deals I can remember. So you'd think that Jerry would start to learn his lesson, right? Because he's the one that's getting taken to Pound Town, right? And having to shell out record deals. So I'm like, you'd think he'd learn his lesson and get ahead of these at some point. But, maybe I'm asking too much of the Joneses. So in other Cowboys news, I saw we lost our nickel cornerback, Jordan Lewis. I believe he signed with the Jaguars.
Yep.
That's a loss, man.
That's a huge loss. He was the quarterback of the defensive backfield. While Micah Parsons did great, in linebacker and defensive line, Jordan Lewis was the one who was making sure that everybody is in their spot, especially with the injuries we had at cornerback. him in the nickel position and then even taking over the safety here and there as needed made such a difference for the over-the-top passes that happen. Or he's also plays really great in the box too. So he was always a good guy to bring the eighth guy down to the box for run coverage too. So I'm very upset to losing him, and I think that changes the draft board a little bit. That's one of those losses that I'm going to scratch my head about for a little while because he was such a productive force on the defensive side.
Right. He understood the scheme. He was smart, right? So he was a big factor in terms of organizing and getting everyone in the right place. And he was just a stalwart that kind of anchored the defensive backs on the team. And so I don't really think you have a proven one-to-one replacement for him, though it does open up another need, right? And we're going into the draft with a bunch of needs already. So I definitely don't love the news. The Cowboys signed a long snapper. Any thoughts on that?
Look, the long snapper position is incredibly important. We had the same long snapper for like 12 years, but you've got to think of how important the special teams as a unit is. If you've got a long snapper that's not able to get the ball on the mark to whoever is the holder or to the punter, I mean, that can make or break momentum of the game and blow something wide open. I mean, I can think of many a times when they bring in either a replacement or the backup or somebody who hasn't been a long snapper comes in and they just can't handle the ball the same way. It's a tough position. That's why they're also one of the highest paid offensive linemen.
Yeah. No argument from me. So to wrap up the Cowboys stuff, I do wonder, we know the Cowboys did a bunch of restructuring. They restructured CD's deal, they restructured Dak's deal, and they opened up a ton of cap space. I was just assuming something was getting ready to put on a deal for Micah. Now, if that's not the case, you have to wonder, are they going to be more active as we get deeper into free agency here? I would assume they would. Otherwise, why restructure, right? Just keep your cap space for down the line. I think they've done anything major yet, but we'll see. There's some moves being made, deals being signed. Geno Smith, so he's headed over to the Raiders. Thoughts?
Geno's fine. I mean, we all thought he was washed. He did okay, and then he was really, really good for the Seahawks. I think he took a lot of people by surprise for how well he's played for the Seahawks. How he's going to do in Las Vegas, who knows? I think it depends on what piece around him. I mean, but Las Vegas also just signed Max Crosby to that gigantic deal at defensive end, so that's going to put space. So I'm not sure what else they're going to be able to do in the offseason. The Raiders are fine. Like I well enough to speak super intelligibly about him. I think Geno will be fine. He's a good mobile quarterback with a decent arm. So I think as long as he's got a good offensive line.
I don't disagree with anything you said. He rejuvenated his career in Seattle, supported, some pretty good offenses. I am really, really worried, actually, for the Raiders. So obviously, their quarterback play has been abysmal for a long, long time. Last year, they had, Aiden O'Connell and just a motley crew. Gardner Minshew, just good Lord. And, my guy, Brock Bowers on the team, huge fan of him. He's a freaking beast. So, I think Geno helps him a little bit. But, yeah, I don't know. The rest of the receiving core is thin. Not a whole lot of talent there. Running back, not great, right? I don't have high hopes for the offense. So we'll see. It's an interesting move. The Seahawks also sent DK Metcalf. He moved over to Pittsburgh. So that's a big move. He teams up with George Pickens on that wide receiver room. That's pretty damn impressive. Honestly, if you ask me now, they got some talent. So thoughts on that?
Well, not only do you got George Pickens, but you've also got Freiermuth at tight end. I mean, those three, I saw Ben Roethlisberger put out a video. He put his Steelers helmet back on. I was like, hey, with that receiving core, maybe I'll jump in and come play quarterback again. Hey, I'd love to see that. I don't think he could, but I think they have the ability to be dangerous receiving.
Agreed. The question is going to be who's going to be quarterback, right? Is it Russell Wilson? I heard some rumors that they're going to bring in Aaron Rodgers, and so we'll see, right? That's going to determine some of this. I think with either of those guys, that offense could be fine. I wish they would solve the quarterback situation, honestly, and draft somebody, but they have not done that since Roethlisberger retired. So we'll see. Speaking of Aaron Rodgers, a lot of rumors that he's going to a bunch of different places. The one that's been pretty hot lately is the Giants. So given the rest of the Giants roster, if they do get Rodgers, does that make him a contender in the NFC East?
Rodgers is washed. I mean, Dude tore his Achilles 4 plays in 2 seasons ago. He's washed. I mean, don't get me wrong. He is one of the greatest to ever be under center. I mean, I loved watching him play with the Packers, but he moved on, and they moved on for a reason. He's aged. Mentally, I'm sure he's still probably one of the best to pick apart a defense, but his ability to actually play was put in big question last year with his final season with the Jets. So bring him on to the Giants. I mean, the Cowboys crushed the Giants at every turn anyways, even though Packers and Rodgers had our number every single year in the playoffs, it seems. I don't fear him being a Giant. I would welcome it.
Dude, that's the part that scares me, right? There is a part of me that wonders, like, okay, he moves into the same division as us, and somehow they're going to eke out these close wins, right? For, twice a year for 2 years or whatever it is. There is a tiny part of me that worries about that. From a football perspective, that dude was a statue last year. I mean, he can still throw the ball, right? He can still be accurate. He can still lead game-winning drives, but man, he's a statue back there. He cannot move, right? And when you look back at the Rodgers from the Packers, that was his secret weapon. He would get outside of the pocket, make these throws on the run. Did it against the Cowboys in the playoffs, or some of the plays that still get played on SportsCenter with him getting outside of the pocket and making something happen. So I'm always going to have a little bit of PTSD about that. But yeah, I agree with you. From a football perspective, you just can't do that anymore. He's kind of a worse version of like the 44-year-old Brady. And the time of those quarterbacks has passed. Like now is the Lamars, the Mahomeses, and the Jaden Daniels, the guys that can move. So I agree with you. I saw Darnold is the replacement for Geno Smith. So he signed with the Seahawks. What did you think about Darnold's performance at Minnesota this year? And do you think he can keep the Seahawks afloat?
The record speaks for itself, and he played in a really hard division. The NFC North was the best division in all of football last year. So clearly he's got something that's good, but we also then saw what the Vikings couldn't do in the playoffs. And so how much of that falls solely on Darnold's ability to be clutch, to be what he needs to be when he needs to be it? Or was it just like lightning in a bottle and he got real lucky, right? I mean, he's a journeyman now. This is going to be his 5th team. So clearly he doesn't have what it takes to be the guy. And if the Vikings are going to move on from him after that type of season, what does that tell you?
You hit it. Yeah, you nailed it. He had a great regular season. He won some games. But I think most people, including me, that was the easiest team to bet against in the playoffs, right? There's just some people that are good in the regular season, and then when the lights get bright and the pressure's on, they're going to fold. I think that was Darnold. Really, to me, Darnold and Geno Smith are kind of in the same phylum. I think they kind of struck gold. They had the right offense. They had the right coaching staff. But you put these guys even in an average situation, and I just don't think they're going to be very good. My prediction for both of those guys, I think they turn back into pumpkins this year, and I don't really think the Seahawks or Raiders are going to do much. So now somebody else just got replaced. So it came down the wire that Justin Fields had signed with the Jets. I'm interested. What do you think about that?
Who does he have to throw to?
Garrett Wilson.
Okay, so Justin Fields with the Bears, right?
Steelers. Yeah. And I think he went 3-1 before he got replaced by Wilson.
And he was drafted
teams.
Let me see. I'm going to see. Fields was 24th on the Athletics top 150, but he was the 11th pick in the 2021, just outside the top 10. So when you pick a quarterback at the top 10 and in 4 years, he's on his 3rd team, once again, what did that tell you? Is he just not that good? Is he bad in the locker room? Does he not have the leadership qualities? He's missing something. And the quarterback is far and away the most important position in football. And when you've got a guy like a Pat Mahomes, when you've got a guy like a Lamar Jackson, you don't move from those guys for many, many reasons. And the guys you do move from, there's only a few reasons why you need to move from them, and because they're not the right person.
Yeah, and I think for Fields, that weakness is the throws. There's some throws that you have to be able to make to play at an NFL level, and he just doesn't routinely, he routinely misses wide open guys. And it's really hard to run an NFL offense when you're going to routinely miss wide open guys. So undoubtedly, he makes amazing plays on his feet. And once in a while, he'll make a throw where you're just like, damn, the arm is there. But the accuracy has always been an issue. And he just, that's why the Steelers replaced him. He went 3-1 and he still got benched. Again, right? That tells you what you need to know. I mean, it kind of does. The Jets are, I don't know. They're part of this group that just, they haven't been able to get a quarterback for a long time. Yeah, I've lumped them in with the Steelers. I lumped them in with the Raiders. These, all of these teams that we're talking about right now, they're kind of in a similar situation. So I don't know. I kind of think they're going to have to do something else. So I don't know if that's in the draft or what it is. I guess we'll see. So these guys that we're talking, Geno, Aaron Rodgers, Darnold, Justin Fields. In your mind, how does Dak compare to those guys?
So Dak, by all metrics, he is a top 10 quarterback. Doesn't matter who you put him up against in quarterbacks that are starters right now. He's a top 10 guy. And in some categories, a top 5 guy. But the problem goes back to the team that's around Dak. While I just said it, the quarterback's most important position in football, it's still 11 people on the offensive side of it. And when you've got offensive tackles that get called for holding 2-3 times a game that wipe out what could be a good scramble or a great play, when you've got running backs that cannot run the ball farther than 3 yards at a time, if you're lucky, the quarterback position becomes very, very easy to read, because then if they know that, especially because that's been the Cowboys' MO, they don't have a rush, they get behind the sticks, they get behind in points, and now it's pass first. And so the moment they go one-dimensional, which has been a big piece of Dak's game because of the running situation, with the exception of maybe his first 2 years with Zeke, they're always passing. And then he gets hurt when he has that long run against the Commanders a couple years ago, and he's out for that year and then into the next year. And he hasn't been the same quarterback since, especially not running. Will run as a very last-minute situation and most times takes a sack. So where do these guys stack up? I just went on a Dak tirade. Excuse me. Hang on. Let me go back. Your initial question, how does Dak stack up against these guys? Same thing. He's the guy. He's a quarterback. He's probably not going to go anywhere anytime soon. He did sign a big deal whenever he got his contract, but that was predicated on what the organization knew the new CBA would allow for salary cap. And so right now, compared to like Josh Allen's contract at $330 million, we paid Dak pennies. So I'm fine with his contract right now. So he's okay. He's serviceable. Realistically, it doesn't really matter, because no matter how good he is, we ain't winning.
That was going to be my follow-up. Can the Cowboys win a Super Bowl with Prescott at quarterback?
No, they cannot. Because this goes back to your point earlier. Great regular season quarterback. Fantastic regular season quarterback. Lights get bright. And just can't do it. And while it's not all on him, the buck stops with the quarterback and he can't get it done.
Yeah, that's that. At the end of the day, that is my perspective on Dak too. I see him as the target version of Geno Smith, or the target version of Sam Darnold. And what I mean by that is that Geno Smith is the Walmart version of Dak. So, Target's a little bit upscale. You can go in, you can grab a Starbucks, you can even, spend an hour or two on the weekends, treat it as a little date, get a little bit fancier wine maybe. Heck, even buy some clothes. There's some decent stuff there at Target. Walmart, McDonald's, the options aren't quite as upscale. So that's the way I see Dak. He's a little bit above that in terms of tiers, if you were to think of it that way. But you're going to flame out in the playoffs. Dak, you can see the look in his eyes change. The lights are too bright, and then he has that stare where, the camera will pan to him as we're down 21-0 or whatever in the playoff game. And then you'll just see him just staring, not blinking. He just has that dazed look on his face. I've never seen that, I don't think, with any other player where you can actually see the change. Yeah, I call him whack Prescott. I'm not a fan. I never have been a fan. I thought the Cowboys moved on from Tony too early. And so, to me, in my mind, if you don't have a Super Bowl winning quarterback, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? Like, to me, it's just okay.
I agree with that. But so let's say that the Cowboys make it through the NFC Championship, they win, and then they make it in the Super Bowl. That means he's got to beat Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Patrick Mahomes. Not happening. He's not going to win against any of those quarterbacks. It's just not going to happen. And so that's why even if he makes it to the pinnacle of the season, the likelihood, I mean, God, and even so, like the Cowboys they won't beat the Eagles. I mean, I don't see the Cowboys getting through Jalen Hurts, even if that would be the NFC matchup, or the Lions, or I just don't see it happen. To your point about Tony Romo, yeah, I agree. They probably did, but Tony was on the back end of his career and he was getting injured. I still maintain that he's the best quarterback to never win a Super Bowl. Not in Cowboys history, in I think football history. He was so underrated because of being the quarterback for America's team that he got so much hate. But back to Dak, I think where does the best job is he's a locker room guy. He's a good leader and he's great on the podium. He always says and does the right things. He's likable. He stays even keel. He doesn't get upset. And I think that's important come around very often, if ever. Josh Allen is the closest thing to being the next best quarterback, and he still doesn't have anything to show for it. On paper, he's no better than Dak, stats wise. But who would you rather have? Josh Allen.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. I have some issues with Dak's leadership style, but your point is valid, right? There's only a handful of guys, and the thing is like you can win. I think you can win a Super Bowl with the next tier down, but you have to go like not the Jerry version of all in. You have to go legitimately all in, just like the Rams did, right? They didn't have one of those guys. Stafford is good, but he's not top 5, right? He's probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 range. But if you put a good enough team around him, yes, he can win a Super Bowl. The thing is, the Cowboys have never showed any inclination that they're willing to do that. You have to mortgage some of your future, make some trades.
No. I agree with that. But the biggest difference above everything else, Sean McVay, Mike McCarthy, or now it's with Schottenheimer, right? Coaching staff makes, I think, an even bigger difference because you can take, even like the Eagles, whenever they won, when Nick Folk was the backup, he came in and won everything for Carson Wentz because not only did they have a good team, but they also had great coaching. And that's why I think as much as I want to punch Nick Sirianni in the face, dude can coach. And the players get behind him, they believe in him. And I think ultimately that makes a big difference. Now, if the tush push gets taken away this next year by the competition committee, that may change things for the Eagles, but we'll see what happens. But I think coaching is just as important, if not as important as a quarterback.
I think it does play a big factor, especially in the playoffs when it's a lot of schemes to take stuff away. But the thing that the Eagles and Rams had in common is they made big moves, right? They made big moves. They signed guys, they spent money, they traded some of their future, they traded picks, right? Where they're, the Rams just loaded up, all across the defense, and they did everything that they could to win that Super Bowl, and it paid off. And you saw the Eagles do some of that last year, right? And now they're continuing to do it. They give him a huge deal. They're continuing to be aggressive, and their window's wide open, right? They could easily add. The Cowboys have never showed any inclination or desire to do that, unfortunately. So when you have a mid-tier quarterback like Dak, you have no chance if you don't do that, in my opinion. And so we're just kind of stuck in purgatory.
Could agree more. Could not agree more. And you know what? Once again, that's okay. I understand my lot in life as a Cowboy fan. If they somehow surprise me and do something better than a one and done playoff run, great. I'm not going to have any expectations. And what's going to happen, like last season, we whooped the tar out of the Browns. I mean, it was just an absolute straight ass whipping. And I was like, let's go. And then you saw what happened the next week against the Saints when they scored, 75 points or whatever stupid thing they did. Let's switch it over to the Dallas Mavericks. The last 5 games have been tough to watch. It's hard basketball, lots of injuries. So what are your thoughts right now on the state of the Mavericks? We talked last week about Team Tank. Are you still in that camp?
Yeah, 100%. Still aboard Team Tank. So it's clear that we have a front office that's really motivated to win. They traded everything for a 2-year win now window. And they're going to hold to that and keep trying to win. I think we have been blessed by the basketball gods because our whole team is injured and we only have 7 healthy players now, which is very much helping our tank mission here right on time, because I think we have 2 games against the Spurs this week who are also decimated by injuries. So we're going to have a tank off, and I'm really excited about this tank off. I think we have an excellent chance to go 0-2 against the Spurs, and I'm excited about it. What about you?
Well, the Mavericks have been doing their damnedest to lose games at the end. I mean, what was that, Friday night against the Grizzlies? They were in it the entire time. They kept the lead, I think, through most of the game. It was middle of the fourth quarter. They finally lost the lead, and then, of course, couldn't take it back. And Brandon Williams had, I think, his career high in points. Najee Marshall was right there as well with really, really large point totals. But yeah, Dwight Powell and Kessler ran into each other, and they're potentially going to be looking at time. So yeah, not only are we absolutely maxed out with injuries, we're shooting up 7, maybe 8 people a game, but now because of our salary cap issues, we can't even buy anybody as part-time replacement players from now to the end of the season. We talked last week about Kyrie's injury and how he's playing so many minutes. Right now, the ability to sub is basically gone. So you're going to have random guys that aren't really that good that cannot play 38 minutes a game that are going to be forced to, which is going to lead to more injury. And then all of a sudden we're just going to, that may be the best thing for us, because then you just call a DQ, say, you know what, everybody else win, we're just going to sit this one out.
Yeah, so Jason Kidd had the quote, I think yesterday, where he was like, yeah, I wanted to take somebody out of the game to rest them, but I had nobody to put in.
Mm-hmm. Never in his career had injuries been.
He's been in basketball his whole life.
Yeah.
Yep. I've never seen anything like this, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. So this is, you'll see teams that when they're out of it, all of a sudden people will have phantom injuries pop up, and then they start missing games. You'll see teams tank that way. This isn't even that. This is real. These are real injuries. These are real people that are getting knocked out for the season. Any part of this that you think is the karma gods laying judgment on the map?
February 1st literally has. I mean, there's nothing. There's no good news that has come out of this organization since that day. And I mean, I don't see an end in sight. We got 20 games left, and the remaining schedule is pretty tough. There's a lot of really, really good teams you still got to play. There's also some trash teams like the Spurs and then the Sixers. But the problem is, you got no one to play. And so I'm also all aboard Team Tank. I don't want to see any necessarily more injuries, but I also do not want to see them rush anybody back. I do not want to see Lively, Gafford, Washington, or AD on that court at any point in time from right now through the end of the season. And if they do that, I can't imagine that'd be a Jason Kidd call. That would have to be an ownership call, and that would be the absolute worst thing they could do.
Yes. And it does concern me because, like I said, this front office is very much in win now mode. And so I think they might do it just to placate, some season ticket holders, because that's another storyline, or just validate the decisions that have been made, which there's no validating it. So I really hope they don't do that. But right now they're set up really well to continue losing games. So I think they can extend that 5-game win streak. And that's what I'm rooting for. So I was at the game Friday. I want to note a couple things because it was an interesting experience. So walking into the arena, what hit me was there was almost nobody was wearing a jersey. So, which is a big change, right? Everybody was wearing a jersey, prior to the Luka trade. Now the problem is they were almost all Luka jerseys. So that was interesting. I also noted most of the fans were not your normal Mavericks fans that I'm used to seeing at games. And I think that's just a product of season ticket holders just not interested in going anymore, maybe giving up their tickets, or just don't want to go and sold their tickets or just didn't show up. I think people that normally can't or wouldn't go to games are now picking up $5 and $10 seats and are showing up to these games. And I think that kind of plays into why I didn't see many jerseys. My section was almost empty at tip-off, something I have never seen during my entire run as a season tickets holder, especially for a Friday night game against a good team. So that tells you a lot. We're seeing tickets for $5, $6, $7. I saw suite tickets with unlimited food and alcohol going for $100 about an hour before tip-off on Friday. So that tells you the state. Yeah, that tells you the state of things right now. I wore my Fire Nico shirt, and my wife was like, shouldn't you cover it? Wear a sweater or something in case they don't get you in. And I was like, I don't give a shit. So I just walked right in. I did see some posters in the trash as I was walking in. So I don't know. I don't really know what the policies are right now, to be honest with you.
Did they
I
make you
had no
take it off?
issues. Nope. Nobody told me anything. I did see somebody else. They were in the hundreds and they were wearing something similar and they were forced to take it off. So it's really weird right now in terms of what they're allowing, what they're not allowing. I was texting you during the game. And so I was sitting pretty much right above Nico, who was hiding in the tunnel. I took a bunch of pictures and video, and my wife did too. And her picture of Nico actually got picked up on Twitter and was seen by 40,000 people. So that was a cool moment on Friday.
Did she tag the podcast on that post?
No, because she did. So somebody, a big account picked up her picture and credited her. So that's what happened. And so, but it was pretty cool moment, one that got a lot of engagement. But yeah, I started to say goodbye to some of my seatmates because, I don't know, I only have a couple games left on my plan. And with so many people missing or just not showing up, you got to say goodbye when you get the chance. So by and large, the people I'm talking to have chosen to give up their season tickets. A couple people are undecided. I was talking to him at the game and he's going to try and negotiate it. He was like, I'm going to try and negotiate it down. And I was like, good luck, right? Let me know what they tell you. So that's the state of the Mavericks. That's a sad situation. It just gets more and more depressing.
Yeah, it does. And then LeBron and Luka made an incredible duo. They are showing that, LeBron can be an off the ball guy, which is crazy to think about. He just got hurt with a hamstring. So he's going to be out 1 to 2 weeks, give or take. So he may miss a good portion of the last of the season. Luka got pickpocketed the other day in the game against the Celtics. And then they took it the other way, took it to the rack, and Luka tried playing some defense. I forget who dunked on him, but he dunked, swung on the rim, and cut Luka right in the face with his knee. That was unfortunate. He seemed to be fine, but those were just some notable things out of the Celtics game that happened. They did end up losing that game, snapping their win streak.
Yeah. It's interesting, though. I mean, Luka made a game in the fourth quarter. He kind of, after not playing great during the first half, he really found his rhythm and he kept them in it, even as LeBron went out. So, that's just what he does. LeBron made it seem like the injury wasn't too serious. Maybe he missed a game or two, but they should continue to be in the thick of things for the rest of the season. Speaking of LeBron, on that play, is LeBron the first person in history to injure his groin on a flop?
He's got to calm down. Because was that the play where it looked like he got an elbow to the face? There was this much space between his chin and was it Jaylen Brown? His elbow? Insane. And they've got to do something about that because he has done this his entire career. And you know what? Serves him right. You're going to flop that bad on a play that never should have happened. You deserve to get hurt. Just as some karmic, retribution.
I seriously think he did because what you see is the elbow. It hit him like in the chest, like in the upper chest. But you see him whip up his head and he does like a full body extension, almost like where he got hit so hard on his chin that it lifted his body in the air. But because it was a flop, I think he overdid it and he pulled his groin in the act of delivering this flop. Here's what I'll say. Manu Ginobili is a proud man right now because he inspired a whole generation of floppers. I think James Harden was looking at his phone, chuckling, watching that also. Mm-hmm. Even at 40 years old, he continues to really, push the tradition forward of being a generational flopper. And, I don't want to see it die out completely. I think we need one elite flopper in the NBA at all times. So we just need somebody else to take up that role because LeBron ain't going to be around much longer. Anything else on the Mavs?
No. We are going to change it up a little bit and talk about something we haven't talked about yet. And that is possibly the greatest show ever written for TV. And that'd be Severance. I don't know about you, but I watched this show when it first came out, the first season. We watched it and then we had to wait through the writer's strike. And I think it was 2.5 years. And then they finally released season 2. And we have been watching it every night. And I'm so mad because Apple TV does not play shows in other countries. We learned that when we went to Italy. And so I won't be able to watch the final 2 episodes while we're gone. So I'm going to have to avoid social media. I'm going to have to avoid everything I possibly can. But I want to hear from you about your thoughts about the shows up to this point. season 8. And listeners, if you haven't watched I said episode 8, not season 8. If you haven't seen the latest episode, stop watching right now, click away, go watch the episode, come back, because spoilers will definitely be ahead. What did you think of the shortest runtime episode?
I was shocked when it ended. Yeah, I mean, it felt like half an episode to me. So I was, it was surprising. And after the fact, it's pretty clear that maybe that was intentional in terms of why they did that. Where are we at on the season? Is there 1 or 2 left, or where is it at? The previous episode was one of my favorite episodes of TV that I've ever seen. I was stunned, right? I knew it immediately. As soon as the credits rolled, I was just sat there like, damn, that was incredible. That was an all-timer. I continue to think that, just, man, what an episode of TV. It was just so different from the Severance that we've seen prior, right? In terms of, it was so much brighter. We were getting lots of outside time. We were getting flashbacks. It was the directorial debut. I forget the name of the person that directed it, but for that to be your first episode of directed TV is insane. So yeah, just let me give full props to that. I saw this latest episode as, to me, it just did a lot of filling in the blanks. So we got a lot of background on Cobell and kind of her upbringing and kind of what her story was. And she was essentially disappeared this season after season 2 or episode 2, right? And then, now we know why. So she kind of comes in, we get her backstory. Now we understand a couple of things in terms of the origination of this whole thing, the origination of Severance. And I think it's going to set up the last 2 episodes nicely. I didn't like this episode nearly as much as I liked the previous one, but that was a high bar to try and surpass. Overall, I love this season. I think it's better than season 1. And I'm hooked on the show. What do you think?
I was really pissed off that it's only 37 minutes, number one, because we've been getting 54 and 57-minute episodes.
Yeah.
To me, given the fact that there's only 2 more episodes after this, I mean, and also the first 33 minutes was Cobell driving around, sleeping in a moldy bed, and getting high. Like, that was the first 33 minutes. So the last 3 minutes was where we got everything. However, whenever she was going through the yearbook, I paused it on every screen. And 2 things I thought were really interesting. Number one, the Myrtle Egan School for Girls. Did you see what their mascot is? They're the Fighting Kids. So is that children or is that baby goats? And goats have been a ongoing thing throughout this entire show. We've seen it with the racing of the goats, but there's been goat statues everywhere. And there were a couple of different goats on the little mural of stuff that was in her mother. She grew up we're going to see the full reintegration of Mark. We're going to see how he does and what this actually looks like. So I also have a theory on Cold Harbor, by the way. So we got to see all the rooms that Gemma was going into, right, on the last episode. So there's a theory about Cold Harbor, about is she going to get drowned? What's going on? My theory is they were having fertility issues. And I think with Mark in the intro, there's 24 closed files. The only one that isn't closed is Cold Harbor at number 25. So I think because Gemma has had fertility issues and the fact that there's theories that Helena is trying to get pregnant by Mark, I think it has something to do with the female reproductive system and inability to have babies.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I tend to agree, just because, when we see, so in the last episode, when we see Gemma leave, the whole lead up to that was kind of their infertility battle. And then you kind of see the strain that has on their marriage. Right. And then Mark starts to disassociate, and he's kind of becoming more and more distant, and it's having an effect on her. Right. And then all of a sudden, she says goodbye to go to that party or whatever it is, but she makes it pretty clear that that's not what it was. Right. She was pretty clearly doing something or somehow getting involved in this, in this Lumen thing. So, I don't know why else she would do that if it wasn't related to fertility, right? If they hadn't promised her something, I don't know why else would she sign up? So I tend to agree with you. I don't know what it is, right? I don't think it's as simple as oh, well, you do this and you can get pregnant. It's not that. So I'm trying to figure out what the bigger picture is, but I don't know.
I don't know either, but we can save more for the next episode because I know I'm going to want to talk more about this, especially as the season comes to a close. But let's go ahead and wrap up. Let's talk about some things that are coming up in the next episode. We are going to dive in to the NCAA bracket for March Madness. Ron and I, of course, met through something called Master Networks, which most of our viewers will know what that is. And we are going to be doing an event for charity that goes directly to our region of Master Networks. So we'll get more into that. I'm also going to touch base on the Frisco Streets Food Truck and Music Festival that's coming up in May on the 3rd. So we can talk about that. Ron, what else do we got coming up on the next show?
We are going to get more into Cowboys drafts specifically. It's time to start looking at Cowboys needs, what the potential draftees might be, who we want them to take at every position. So I think that's something. We're also getting closer and closer to the Masters, and I'm continuing to watch Full Swing. So we're definitely going to have some more golf coming up. Of course, we'll keep everyone updated on the Stars, Mavericks, as their seasons continue on towards closing out here. Am I missing anything? I feel like
we'll get fantasy football is right around the corner as well. So we will definitely be segmenting some fantasy football, some picks, waiver wire, drafting, all that stuff. I do love me some fantasy. So
do I. Okay. And then we still need to figure out the guest situation. I think March Madness is a perfect topic for that, because I think me and you are both committed to supporting Mizzou. So we probably need somebody that's some more awareness on the rest of the bracket and what that looks like.
Well, and I'm also first to admit NCAA basketball is not something I've got to strengthen when it comes to teams, players, and their plights. But other than that, I got nothing else for this show. Ronnie, you got anything else you want to add?
Thanks, everybody, for listening, for supporting, for subscribing. We appreciate you.
For Ron Hearn, I'm Brandon Cooley. As always, the next round's on us.